Welcome to I Love You and I Like You with Mark and Kathleen. Welcome to I Love You and I Like You with Mark and Kathleen. I'm Mark. This is Kathleen.
Hi, I'm Kathleen.
Yeah, and we are a married couple. We've been married over 12 years, going on 12 and a half. And we had the idea for this podcast several weeks ago. It's something that, I listened to a lot of podcasts and I kept thinking, we have great conversations. We get into some pretty good topics as well. And it makes for good conversation. And I think that there are people out there that would enjoy listening to us. So thank you for agreeing to be on this experiment with me. Hopefully it's fun for you. One of the things I was most excited about was just having a chance to sit down, distraction-free, other than the distractions around us, all the cameras and the lighting and stuff like that. But the kids are in bed. You might even hear crickets chirping in the background. And, it's just some kind of chill time that I can spend with you to have good conversations.
Yeah, because we have conversations all the time, but we're often interrupted or we're on our way somewhere or we have to pause in the middle of a conversation. And it's just good. It's chill. We can just unwind.
I've been looking forward to it all week because for work, I work in the financial industry and I work in a call center. And I'm expected to take a minimum of 20 calls a day. And so I'm talking to people constantly, but it's about things that they want to talk about. And, I can be empathetic and I can be really helpful and I have good client satisfaction.
But you can't be really open. You can't just share your opinion.
Exactly. Someone will say something about politics and I have to be kind of guarded in my response because I don't want to, represent my employer in a poor light or something. So, I don't want this podcast to drift into areas of negativity or like really intense debate. Our goal is really summed up in the title. So I love you and I like you because I love you and I like you.
I love you. I like you too.
It comes from an episode of Parks and Recreation, which is a show that Kathleen and I finished binge watching on Netflix several months ago. And two of the main characters who end up getting married. No spoilers here. This show's been out for a long time. But they say, I love you and I like you. And they say that as part of their wedding vows, actually, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
But I like that concept because when you commit to someone and you marry them, you love them. And that's something that is a constant, right? That's not going to change. There are moments where you question whether you like them in heated exchanges or something, but the goal at the end of the day, not just with this podcast, but in life, is to be in a place where we love each other and we like each other.
Yeah, I think we're doing pretty well.
Yeah. No, yeah. I know. So I don't want it to sound like this podcast is like marriage therapy or something. If you want that, go listen to Candace and Casey's couples therapy podcast.
That's a fun one. Yeah.
It's enjoyable, but it's more contentious than I want this one to be. And really the concept, the idea is to discuss things that we encounter in our daily lives, things that, are challenges for us or things that we see in the news or, whatever it is, and have an open and honest discussion with each other. And, we may have differing opinions, but we can still be respectful. And at the end of the day, we can still love each other and like each other. And I kind of hope that through listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, because you can watch this on YouTube if you're just listening on one of the audio streams, and go check it out on my YouTube channel, Mark Reviews. My name is Mark and I review stuff. I'll also upload these podcasts probably most of the time. We'll see how much work this is. But as you watch this or listen to this, wherever you're tuning in from, first and foremost, thank you. This is something that's enjoyable for us, but then to be able to share it with other people brings me a lot of fulfillment as well.
Well, and you've been thinking about doing this for so long.
So long.
And you had these, we've had conversations because we're talkers. We like to talk a lot.
Yeah.
And for months now, and during certain conversations, you'd be like, oh, this would be a great podcast.
Right.
I said, yeah, I would. Sometime. Yep. Because I don't mind. Clearly I like to talk, but I don't like being on camera very much. So the camera is kind of stressing me out a little bit. But
so maybe that's something we talk about, whether we keep doing the camera. This is an experiment. everything's negotiable.
Yeah.
But no, I'm glad to have you along for the ride for so long, even for a couple of years. I've done a lot of this creative, endeavor type stuff on my YouTube channel, and my undergrad degree was in broadcast journalism, and I worked for a radio station and a TV channel, and so this has been such a part of my life that doing a podcast feels really natural. Camera doesn't stress me out, especially because I'm not like rehearsing something scripted. But that's not natural for everyone. And so I know I'm pushing you out of your comfort zone a little bit.
That's okay. I'll just ignore the camera.
Yeah, ignore the camera. Well, and that's something that, when I worked at KSL News Radio here in Salt Lake City, that's something that I was told by my news director. They said, don't focus on the fact that at any given moment there are hundreds of thousands of people listening. I was like, where are you going with this? You're stressing me out. And they said, think about talking to the person in the next room. Right? You're talking to a friend, and that's why having a co-host on a podcast is a much easier or better idea than trying to go solo on it. You don't have interaction, and I've listened to podcasts that are hosted by one person versus podcasts that have two people or a couple of guests or something. Mm-hmm. And the ones with guests or multiple hosts are so much more enjoyable. So, and I'm not about to take on another big project that separates my time from you. So
this is fun. We can do it together.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Okay. Clearly, I talk a lot, but the point of this lengthy rambling intro is to just invite you to tune in with us as we post new episodes. It's already available on Spotify and Google Podcasts, and it's coming to more platforms all the time. So check us out on anchor.fm/I love you and I like you. That's where you can follow us, find your favorite streaming platform, like our podcast, follow us so that when new episodes are posted, you'll know about it. You can also follow my YouTube channel, Mark Reviews on YouTube. And, you'll see notifications, but we want you to join the conversation. And there are a couple of ways that you can do that. So one of the reasons for uploading it to YouTube is that there's a comment section down below this video. So you can go and, comment, tag specific time codes if you want, ask us questions. And then on the Anchor app or on their website, you can actually record a voice message for us, kind of like leaving a voicemail. So if you wanted to ask us a question or join the conversation, give us some positive feedback. I'm not going to play Kathleen any negative stuff that you leave us. I would love to include some of that in future episodes. But ultimately, I want this to be a chance for all of us to see that we can have broad opinions, we can have differing opinions, we can be on different sides of an issue, and we can still come to an agreement and a point where we can find common ground on things. So before we get into really who we are and introduce ourselves, we're going to take a quick ad break, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we had some technical issues during that ad break, so it's a good thing that we took a break there right then anyway. So thank you for sticking with us through that. And thank you for your support of this podcast. So those ads allow us to continue to do this and pay for better equipment and hopefully things that don't have technical issues. But that first half really introduced what this podcast is and what our goals are, but didn't really introduce who we are. So some of you obviously will know us because friends and family are the best supporters, especially as they're starting out. But for people who don't know us, what's our story? Where did we come from and how did we meet?
Well, I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in Newport Beach and Irvine up until I was about 12. It's there that I really gained a love for the beach. I love the ocean. True. I love the beach.
Very true.
I could be on the sand with the waves in a parka or in a swimsuit, and that's my heaven. Yeah. And then when I was about 12, we moved to Provo, Utah. My family and I moved to Utah. And then about my junior, Yeah, after my junior year of high school,
Mhm.
we moved to Georgia, and Norcross, Alpharetta, just that area.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really cool to be able to bounce around growing up, because
Yeah.
I feel like I got to see all different kinds of people, meet a lot of different people. Um, there is the Southern hospitality is very real
Yeah.
in Georgia,
I
which,
loved it.
yeah, you came out to visit. So
Mhm.
after Georgia, I went to school at Brigham Young University, and that's where I met Mark. And then I brought him out. I brought him back home to meet my family, and
Yeah.
that's where you got to
Got to
kind of see
experience
Georgia.
Georgia,
Yeah.
and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So then for me, I was technically born in Provo. Well, my parents were finishing school at Brigham Young University. So we have similar backgrounds here. But then I moved to Colorado, where I lived until I was about 8. And then we moved to Massachusetts, and we only lived there 6 years, despite the fact that my family acts like we go back 5 generations to the Revolutionary War. We are overly obsessed with Boston and the Northeast in general. My parents are from upstate New York, and had a goal of living back there at some point. So we did for 6 years, and then my dad's job took us to Utah. So when I was 14, partway through ninth grade, I moved here, and then that was the year 2000, and been in Utah pretty much ever since, except for 2 years that I spent in Spain as a missionary for our church. And then when I came back from Spain, my parents were insistent that I needed to get a job because I think I was driving them crazy at home, like reorganizing their pantry and just like doing projects around the house because I was between major stages of life. I
Well, and
wasn't
I think your
really fully
friends were
here
in and
yet.
out, right?
Yeah,
Like
so
some of your friends were there, but some of them
right.
weren't. And
And I was like anticipating, moving in with one of my friends from Massachusetts as my roommate, and things like that were aligned, but I couldn't move in yet. So I
yeah,
was stuck at home, not
right.
really a child, not really an adult, and
Yeah.
living at home with your parents at a stage where you have lived abroad for 2 years, it was just a little tough in that situation. Anyway, I digress. We can get into that some other time, but I ended up getting a job on campus at BYU because I knew I'd be down there, and I got a job at the BYU Creamery. And for anyone listening to this who knows about the Creamery, about their incredible dairy products, especially their ice cream. And so that is actually where I met Kathleen and her roommate, because they would come in and get ice cream.
Oh, I love ice cream way too much.
Yeah, it's a constant struggle. So this podcast is taking up our ice cream eating and Netflix watching time.
It is.
So I hope you
true.
appreciate this. No, she came in, and I was the lone clerk in the Yview Park Creamery. So I was the one person working there. It was basically a glorified convenience store without a gas station.
Yeah.
And there were buckets of ice cream there, and so I would scoop the ice cream. I would check out people's groceries and give them their change and like all that stuff.
Well, and we were both dating other people at the
Yes.
time, and then
Yeah.
those relationships just kind of fizzled,
Yeah.
and we
Never should have
still
started, really.
well, and then we still saw each other on a regular basis
Yeah.
because you were still working there and I was still coming in, and up until then, we were just friends or acquaintances,
Well, and so here's the true story. So Kathleen would come in with her roommate, and I could easily remember her roommate's name because it was a very simple name. It was Amy. And for the life of me, I could not remember Kathleen's name at first. She was the first Kathleen I'd ever known in person.
It's not a very common name.
It's not. And I struggle with names and faces at first anyway until I have like some repetition. It's like in school or in the workplace or something, I'm around them all the time. But you were coming in like, a couple of times a week for a couple of minutes.
Well, and you had a lot of other college-aged kids,
Hundreds.
Like girls and guys coming in all the time.
Of all the people that were coming in, I was definitely most interested in you.
Thanks.
But it was a weird situation because that dynamic, that relationship was weird. You were my customer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, here's your change, and are you free on Friday? Like,
Well, and I remember at the beginning thinking, like, as I got to know you better, I just thought, oh, I thought there was, there wasn't really a chance because of that.
it's just a
That
weird
was, well, that
dynamic.
was the only time that we really saw each other
Right.
in the store as a customer.
Yeah.
And so I just remember thinking, oh, Mark is awesome, because we would talk and we would chat because, okay, yeah, you had hundreds of employees, but not all at the same time. I mean,
Right.
students, but
Yeah.
not all at the same time.
Right.
So I remember thinking, oh, Mark is amazing. I hope one day I find a guy like Mark to marry. But I didn't ever think that it would or could be you, just because we weren't in the same circle of friends. Right. Our social path,
well,
our social circles didn't cross.
Yeah, and I'm not the kind of person that's like that bold and forward, I guess. It seemed almost socially taboo to just out of the blue ask you out.
Which is totally not. And honestly, if you had, yeah, I would have been totally fine with it.
Especially at BYU, right? Like, that's, if you're crossing the street with someone waiting for the light to change, it's like, hey, are you free on Saturday?
It's like the cheesy way to...
Right? Yeah. So I don't know.
It's a little weird, though.
I agree. And that, BYU was proof to me that there's someone for everyone, right? But in our case, like, I wanted to ask you out, but I just got in my own head about it, I think. And so... Yeah. Really what happened was I went into church on one Sunday, a few weeks after meeting you, and I was sitting near the back with my roommates who were there and barely awake. Well, I was barely awake too. And
college,
yeah, and yeah, college, exactly. My shift ended at midnight, but that's not when I went to bed, I'll tell you what. So Kathleen walked in with her roommate and sat down several rows in front of me. And I was like, wait a second. She goes to this church too. She's in my same congregation or my same ward. I was like, yes, this is my in. So now we have two connections, and it's not as weird and it's not as awkward.
So do you want to explain what a ward is?
Yeah. Okay. So so a ward is just your local congregation, like geographically defined. And so at BYU, which is owned by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a lot of the population, the student body, is a member of that church. And so the wards or the geographic boundaries of the congregations are really small. Yeah. In our case, it was like 4 buildings. Yeah. I think. That's it. Like 4 apartment buildings. That gave you the couple of hundred people.
Which means that we, as soon as he saw that I was in the same congregation, in the same ward, yeah, he knew immediately that I lived really close to him.
Like in the building behind me.
Right.
Seriously. And I just had no idea because we never crossed paths normally.
Yeah.
So, that was my in. And I don't, and this, you can help me on this. I don't think I asked you out specifically. I think we had like a Halloween activity, and that's where the flirting was hardcore. I mean, that was where it really started, but
I remember after the Halloween activity, we did laundry. Yeah. And okay, I'm kind of a scaredy cat at night. I don't love being outside by myself at night in the dark. It kind of freaks me out.
It's a little creepy.
It's a little creepy.
Even
on BYU campus, which really is like the safest. Yeah. Well, not all parts.
I still get creeped out at night. That's fair.
The place where I lived was extremely safe.
Yeah.
But so my roommate was like, oh, you should call Mark and have him walk you down. I'm like, no, that would be weird. Don't do that. But she knew that I kind of liked him. Yeah. So she actually picked up. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm getting this right. If Amy is listening, she can type in the comments and clarify it. But she picked up the phone and just dialed his number and handed me the phone.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Well, so I have to go back for just a second. So the Halloween activity involved carving pumpkins. There's a pumpkin carving contest. And then they dumped a bunch of the pumpkin guts onto a giant tarp, like a giant twister mat. And then it was like a pumpkin.
It was like a slip and slide kind of.
Yeah, but it became a pumpkin guts fight, and so people had like goop in their hair. There were a couple of guys wrestling.
Thinking about it, like listening to the description, gross. It's really weird now.
It's really weird and gross, but it was super fun.
It was fun. It really was.
Yeah. Pumpkin guts are a little bit acidic, and so they burn a little bit. And they kind of discolor clothes. And I didn't really know that at first. But anyway, so your roommate,
you already like washed your clothes out in the sink, the bathroom or something, and you were like, no, I'm done.
Even better than that. So I went home and I looked in the mirror in our bathroom and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this out of my clothes? It was all over my t-shirt, all over my khaki pants, and it was just super dirty. And so I literally just stepped in the shower fully clothed and washed it off as much as I could, picking stringy pumpkin guts and pumpkin seeds off my clothes. It was nasty. But I was basically done. I like rinsed it out, I hung it up to dry, and I wasn't planning on doing my laundry that night at all. I was like, I was done for the night. I was going to bed. And that's when my phone rang because Amy had just dialed my number on Kathleen's phone.
And so I said, hey, I need to walk down to the laundromat, and I was wondering if you want to come with me. I know it's a little weird, but I'm kind of scared of the dark a little bit. Do you want to come keep me company?
See, and I just remember you asking, are you planning on doing laundry tonight?
That's probably what I said.
Right?
I mean, I probably did. Actually, I think I did. I said, are you planning on doing laundry tonight?
Yeah, and I was like, yes, of course I am, right?
Yeah.
Because that's my in, right? I had a chance to go hang out with you for an hour and a half or however long the laundry took. Yeah.
But we walked down to the laundromat. We did our laundry. And it doesn't take that long to do laundry. We could have just walked back, but we just talked and talked. We talked for like 3 hours.
We should have started the podcast back then.
We should have. We talked for 3 to 4 hours, and we only did 1 load of laundry. It doesn't take that long to do 1 load of laundry.
We were totally done and kept staying there and talking.
And we talked about things that we both enjoyed and things that we liked to do. And then you had brought up hiking the Y. Yeah. I'm not a hiker at all.
To this day.
You've
tried.
Well, my sister, so I was talking to my sister, Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. I was talking to my sister, and it's like, it's just, I love being out there in nature, but the elevation just kills me. And she's like, I love nature walks. I'm like, yes, finally. I don't know why it took me so long to think about this, but I love nature walks. I love being in nature. I just have a hard time with the elevation game.
Yeah.
But when you were talking about hiking, I'm like, okay, I know I like Mark. I know I want to see Mark more. I was like, I'd be up for hiking the Y.
Yeah.
I'm like, clearly that I really liked you because.
And I had hiked the Y several times before, even going back to high school. But this was for my roommate who wanted to go on a double date with the girl that he liked. And so I asked Kathleen if she wanted to go. But
you didn't ask me in that conversation.
Right. I was just talking about
it. And then you, like a week later, you actually asked me out to go hike the Y. And so that was our first date.
That would be our official first date. And that's, BYU cliche. Our meet cute was in the BYU Creamery.
With ice cream.
Right. We were in the same church congregation, ward. And then our first hike was, our first date. Our first date was hiking the Y. So, from that point on, pretty much spent every day together, at least part of the day.
Well, because we lived one building apart.
A building apart. So we would hang out in my apartment primarily, do our homework, watch movies. When I would go down to work, because I was the only person there and I didn't really have a boss watching, Kathleen would hang out behind the counter and just chat with me.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time together. We'd go to school together, catch the bus.
We'd walk to campus or ride the bus. And it was really cute in the winter. So we had different schedules. We would always try to walk to campus together or ride the bus, but we came home at different times. Mm-hmm. And so in the winter, when, it's Utah, it's snowy, it's cold, and not always great to walk it,
right. Yeah.
So I'd get off the bus, walk across the field to the apartment, and knock on Mark's door, and he would always have a cup of hot chocolate just waiting for me.
Well, because I could see the bus pull up across the way, and I'd throw some water in the microwave and had it ready when she would show up.
It was very cute.
I was fully dialed in on making this thing happen. So.
You just knew I loved sweets.
Yeah.
I had a sweet tooth.
Yeah. Well, it started with ice cream at the creamery, and it progressed to hot chocolate. So, we can get into this more in the future too, but dated for several months, not years. kind of when you know, and we just
Yeah.
both come out of relationships that we knew
Right.
were not.
Yeah.
So, we talked about marriage fairly soon, a
Yeah.
couple months in,
We
and
got
then
engaged in
got
February.
engaged in February. So if you're keeping track, pumpkin wrestling happened just before Halloween,
Engaged by February.
engaged by
Yeah.
February, and then married in May.
Yeah, it
And
was pretty fast.
so that is pretty fast. That's faster than I ever thought it would happen for me. When I was coming back from Spain, I was starting at ground zero with my female relationships because I
Relationships.
didn't. None of the people that I had really known and hung out with a lot before I went to Spain were really around or available anymore.
Yeah.
So, thank goodness, because this happened, and
Yay,
that was the
thanks.
best outcome possible. So, we got married May of that year.
Mhm.
Finished up school. We had a whole additional school year after that, and then I'm just doing time frame. Is that when our son was born? Something like that.
So we were
1 year
married for
later.
2 years.
2 years later. Okay, that's right.
So
That's right.
1 year later, well, like what, a year and 3 months? Help my
Yeah,
math
because
here.
you were pregnant when we graduated.
Uh-huh. I was
So
9 months pregnant when we graduated.
that last semester. I'm so
Oh, that
sorry.
was awful. But yeah.
So yeah, then our son was born. We moved out, bounced all over Utah County and Utah.
We actually tried to get out of state, but
Several times.
it never
Yeah.
worked out.
I don't think it was meant to be.
We kind of feel like, God has a plan, and
This is where we're supposed to
we
be.
do everything that we want to do. We put our efforts into the things that we want, and you know what? It works out how it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And it's been good.
It has. Yeah. Now we have 2 kids, son and a daughter, and we're going back to school this week.
Yeah.
By the time the podcast posts.
Right.
And lots of changes, and I think, in all that time, we've lived in 6 different places, I think. And, there've been problematic pregnancies and, surgeries that we didn't want, and
health issues,
issues, job issues, unemployment. It's been kind of a rocky road, but
well, and
that's
just
really life.
up and downs in marriage too.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're not always as awesome
as
we are on this podcast.
Like what was it? 7 years? There was a rough patch right around the time you were in management, and you were reading all these management books. See, it's late and I'm slurring my words now, which was really helpful at that time.
Yeah,
because it helped our relationship.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so much crossover between managing relationships at work or with clients or whatever, and personal relationships.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want it to sound like you were managing a relationship, because you weren't. You were just employing the skills that you learned.
Yeah, it was more about listening and things like that. As you can tell, I still dominate conversations, but
oh no, please.
That's my communications background. So I don't know. I mean, the last couple of things, I guess. So my undergrad degree is in broadcast journalism, communications, emphasis in broadcast journalism. I worked for a radio station, startup TV channel, did some news things, and that's why I have a YouTube channel, just to keep my skills fresh, and it's a fun hobby. And part way into that, and we'll probably talk about this on a future episode, but ended up switching careers completely and going into finance.
Right.
And I've been there for 8 years, a little over 8 years, which is a long time.
It's a long time.
At this point, you would think that I'm fully integrated and like I am a finance guy and I love watching the markets and crunching numbers and stuff. I don't even like budgeting.
That's true. You do not like budgeting.
I'm not.
You like me to stick to a budget, but you don't like budgeting.
That's true.
We should have a whole podcast on budgeting.
I think we will. I think we'll have to, because there are people out there that are dealing with the same kinds of struggles that we do.
Right. And how to make it work in a relationship when you both have different opinions and ideas.
Exactly. And that's key. I mean, people differ in a lot of different ways, but finances is one of the biggest ones. And, I talk to people all day long that are either very successful because they're united, or they're very not because they're not.
Right. Well, it needs to be a balance of power. You can't just have one person saying, this is the way you do it and this is how it works, because it's not
Lucy
going to
and
work.
Ricky on I Love Lucy. That's it. I'm cutting off your allowance. What? She has an allowance.
Hey, it worked though. For
I
them,
guess
it
so.
worked.
Yeah, I guess
For
so.
them, it worked, and but yeah.
No, so Kathleen's background in school, she majored in. They keep changing the name of
They
the
do.
college, but
They do.
home and family living.
I think now
into
it's
school of
called
family
School of
life,
Family Life.
something like that.
Family Life.
Yeah.
I'm
And
pretty
I
sure that's
just
what it's called now.
remember, you had a lot of different kind of humanities classes and
Yeah.
art history and things like that. But the ones where you really seemed to thrive were ones like, early childhood development, human development.
I did
type
love
things.
that. Yeah.
And
Right.
honestly, you can tell so many times that you have this background and this college degree in how to have a good family life and how to help your kids turn out well.
I mean, the college degree definitely helped. I do remember thinking, especially in the younger years, thinking, okay,
this is just like my
this
class.
is why. These are the reasons why my, I don't know, 9-month-old or 18-month-old is waking up in the middle of the night. And
Right.
having that background really helped me
But
cope with the lack of sleep.
Yeah. And I will say, I'll say two things. I think your natural aptitude for those things is kind of what led you into that major in the first
I always
place.
have. Yeah.
Because you had done things with, very fancy daycares and things like that.
I've always loved being around kids. I really have.
And I think the other thing is that the main thing that I think you got from that undergrad degree is something that I've tried to learn, but you're better at it than I am usually, is like assessing, okay, there's a reason for whatever this behavior is. And not just reacting with straight emotion, but being like, okay, tell me what's going on. Why do you feel this way? Or just kind of putting ourselves in check and being like, oh, I haven't fed them in 6 hours. It's my fault,
And honestly, my parents I do give a lot of credit to my parents, because my mom raised us that way just watching how she interacted with little kids and the mindset and mentality of not, oh, that rotten little child, but there's something really going on here. Let's address what is causing these emotions.
They're small adults with complex emotions.
Right.
And they have their own thoughts and things. So it's, you've helped me. I've come a long way, I feel like.
Oh, you're awesome. You're great.
Yeah. But that wasn't naturally my aptitude. I do fine with like infants, because I know that.
Oh, you're awesome
with infants.
You're so good with babies.
Yeah. So, and then I feel like I do really well with like teenagers, people that can be reasoned with.
And see, our oldest is 10 right now.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So I don't know how I'll be with my own teenagers.
Well, I was going to say, okay, our kids are awesome. Yeah. And I love our kids so much. When I am in a social situation with a bunch of teenagers, they scare me. I don't know why. They're awesome people. I love teenagers. My brother's 18 and he's amazing and he's awesome. But when I see a group of teenagers, I'm like, how do I interact?
Well, when I'm at Walmart or an amusement park or whatever, and I see a group of teenagers come in, I'm like, oh, come on, go away. Because when they're together and being goofy and knocking over displays and laughing and running away and stuff, I want to just smack them.
But then you think back of when you were a teenager, and it's all part of growing up, and it's all part of just having fun when you can.
Exploring boundaries and stuff.
Well, and just having fun when you can, because really, when you're an adult and you have a full-time job, you don't get to knock over displays. People look at you like, what's wrong with you? Not knock over displays, but I'm hoping, because we have laid the groundwork for a relationship with our kids, that when they become teenagers, it won't be terrifying, because we'll have that relationship, that groundwork,
they know they
foundation
can talk
down.
to us about stuff, and they know they have to, right?
Well, and I think most of the time they really want to. There have been times where they're like, Mom, Dad, and you can tell that they're a little maybe jittery,
and
but they want to.
7-year-old will still come and whisper in your ear and be like,
right.
I want to do it. You're like, okay.
Well, I think it's because we've really laid the groundwork for open communication, and we're not going to jump down their throat if they've done something that we aren't happy with, I mean, there will be consequences, but we're not just going to jump down their throat.
Yeah. And
we're going to talk with them, not to them.
I think this is informative as maybe a way to wrap up today's episode too, because really what it comes down to is a concept that I like understood in principle, but then I found out there was a name for it, and it's emotional intelligence.
Right.
Right. Like realizing, okay, why do I feel this way? What can I do to change it? And realizing that other people are going through those same things. Right. And this works in a business setting. It works in professional relationships, or just, your neighbor or kids or whatever.
Yeah.
One of the most useful things I got from one of my favorite managers of all time, he said, all behavior makes sense in context. And I love that sentiment because it's exactly what we're talking about. My kid is throwing a temper tantrum. Did I feed them? Have they had enough downtime today? Or are they high strung because I'm high strung?
Well, and touching on what you just said, why am I yelling? Why am I freaking out? Is it because I'm sleep deprived? Is it because I haven't eaten well that day? Or why don't I have the patience? And I mean, yes, it's because we're all human, No, none of us are perfect, but in context, I mean, we can.
And adults can put themselves in timeout. It's like, you know what? I need a couple of minutes. I'm going to go take a break.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about this. Like, that's fine. Right. And these are concepts that you will see, come into play over and over on this podcast. And, hopefully some skills that you can take away for your own parenting, your own relationships. And, I know that the world would be a better place if people remembered this.
Right.
Right. That person sitting across the political aisle from you is not your enemy. They are coming from a different background, a different set of perspectives, different life experiences, different cultures. And, who's to say who's right or wrong, or who is better, right? We can all learn and grow from each other.
Yeah.
And there's strength in that you don't get, operating in a silo on an island.
Definitely. Yeah, so, definitely.
And that's really what marriage is, because we are very different people still.
Oh, yeah.
We're very, you were a little too quick to agree there.
Well, no, we really are very different people, but we work very well together.
Yes. And
that's except for when we're both really tired and hungry, and then we just get cranky with each other. But,
and I'm kind of tired and I'm kind of hungry. So.
Well, but I mean, we are very different people, but we can work together so well.
Yeah.
And we're not, I mean, like you said, hopefully you can learn some skills through this podcast from us. We're not therapists. We're not licensed anybody. No. We have friends and family who we've learned a lot of skills from and a lot of tips from.
And it's a lifelong process.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
And you learn so much. And we just want to share a little bit of what we have learned that has worked just in our marriage and our parenting, just in life,
Yeah, and I think
self-improvement.
That's kind of the idea. So as we talk about different topics, talking about something we've experienced in our own life, and then maybe zooming out and talking about it, with society as a whole and perspective. And so, okay, so this podcast is a work in progress.
See, we like to talk.
We're learning. Yeah. So we went over our half-hour limit on that clip, and both cameras turned off and Anchor stopped recording. So it's a little bit of a disaster. And I'm not sure exactly where it cut off, but what I was saying is, this next conversation, the preview of the next episode, is that I want to kind of unpack your experiences re-entering the workforce for the first time in over a decade. What that is.
I mean, I'm not really re-entering the workforce. I'm not like a full-time employee of somewhere.
Yeah, but you're drawing a paycheck every 2 weeks. You have a regular schedule. So
small one, but I am. That's true.
Mm-hmm. Give yourself some credit.
Okay.
So she's going back to work, and we want to talk about on our next episode what that transition has been like for her, kind of what led to that decision, and then use that and zoom out a little bit and talk about broader topics like, traditional gender roles, family structures, why Utah consistently lags behind the rest of the nation in things like women in the workforce and things like that. So Look forward to that. Follow and like and subscribe on whatever platform you're on. Join the conversation. Again, on Anchor, you can record a voice message that we can include in a future episode. Ask us questions, because one of the things I'd love to incorporate is like a question and answer session.
That would be fun.
In some of these episodes. So, leave your comments everywhere. We welcome them. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to this first episode. If you've made it this far, you are a true and loyal friend. And we like you and we love you. So thank you. And thank you for this first experience. That was pretty awesome.
I love you.
Yeah, I love you too. And I like you.
And I like you.
Okay, thank you. We'll catch you next time.